An exciting story of redemption, love, passion, and new beginnings. She wanted to surrender her body, but he trembled just hearing about it. A love that spans centuries and always ends in fire. This time, either she breaks the curse or dies for loving. Watch this story until the end. You'll be surprised by it. If you like love stories, romance, subscribe to this channel, leave your comment. We post videos like this every day. Continuing. The morning mist embraced the slopes of Deadwater Cove like an eternal morning veil. That's how Isabella always remembered the coastal town where she was born, wrapped in a dense fog that rose from the sea and curled between the ancient pine trees, creating shadows that seemed to dance even when there was no wind. 20 years later, nothing had changed. The same dirt road snaked up the hill, lined with the same wooden houses with closed windows, where curtains fluttered like eyes, spying on those who dared to return. The taxi stopped in front of the Hayes mansion, and Isabella felt her stomach tighten with a mixture of pain and nostalgia. The property was worse than she had imagined. The greyish-blue paint was peeling like dead skin, the red tiles had gaps where wild ferns grew, and the wide porch that had once been the family's pride now leaned to one side, supported only by two cracked columns. But it was there. It was still there, resisting time and abandonment, as if waiting for her. "Are you sure this is the place, Mom?" The taxi driver looked at her through the rearview mirror with an expression of genuine doubt. "This house has been abandoned for years. They say it has problems." Isabella paid the fare without answering and got out with the only suitcase she had brought from Boston. 40 years of life fit into one carry-on. It was impressive how a person could be reduced to so little when deciding to start over, or to end it all, depending on the perspective. The iron gate moaned as it opened, a long and melancholic sound that echoed across the hillside. She walked slowly along the moss-covered stone path, feeling the weight of each step. It wasn't just the years that separated her from the last time she had been there. It was as if she were a completely different person, climbing those time-worn steps. The key was where it had always been, under the third loose board on the porch. Aunt Evelyn had mentioned this in the letter that accompanied the will, along with precise instructions about what Isabella should do. "It's not out of nostalgia that you'll return, my dear," the letter said in the old woman's shaky handwriting. "It's out of debt, to your sister, to me, and especially to yourself." The front door opened with a prolonged creak, like a sigh of relief. The interior was bathed in a golden half-light, cut only by the rays of sun that managed to penetrate through the cracks of the closed windows. The smell was of old wood, dried herbs, and something more subtle, perhaps incense or candles that had burned for hours on end. Aunt Evelyn had always liked rituals, murmured prayers, and whispered blessings. Isabella left her suitcase in the entrance hall and walked slowly through the house. Each room contained ghosts, not the supernatural ones that the women in the village whispered about, but very real ones, made of memories that she had tried to bury for 2 decades. There was the room where she and Lily spent entire afternoons, reading forbidden novels, giggling softly so as not to wake their aunt who dozed in the armchair. There was the kitchen, where she learned to make the sweet bread that her younger sister adored, and where they cried together the night their parents died in the accident. But it was when she went up to the second floor that the real weight of the past hit her. The dark corridor led to 3 bedrooms, and she knew exactly which one Aunt Evelyn had mentioned in the letter. The coldest room in the house, at the end of the corridor, from where you could see the sea through the only window. You facing east. That was where Lily slept when they came to spend their vacations. That was where her sister disappeared on a summer night, leaving only a hastily scribbled note and a jasmine scent that took weeks to dissipate. Isabella pushed the door, preparing herself for another wave of painful nostalgia. But what she found was different. The room was impeccably clean and organized, as if someone had been there recently. The bed was made with fresh white sheets. There were fresh flowers in a vase on the dresser, and the smell wasn't of mold or abandonment, but of lavender and something more. Something that made her heart race for no apparent reason. It was then that she saw the man. He was standing by the window, his back to her, watching the sea through the foggy glass. Tall, with broad shoulders under a dark wool coat that seemed too expensive for this forgotten place. His hair was black and wavy, barely touching the collar of his shirt. There was something in his posture that suggested power, control, but also a subtle tension, as if he were waiting for something. "You took your time," he said without turning around, and his voice was deep, with an accent she couldn't immediately identify. "Not New England, not Midwest, maybe Southern. I was beginning to think you wouldn't come." Isabella felt her blood freeze. No one knew she would return to Deadwater Cove. Not even she herself was sure until she boarded the bus at the Boston terminal 3 days ago. How could this stranger be waiting for her? "Who are you?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. "What are you doing in my house?" He turned around slowly, and when their eyes met, Isabella felt as if the ground had disappeared beneath her feet. His face was disturbingly beautiful. Strong masculine features, light stubble that couldn't hide the scar that cut across the left side of his jawline, and eyes of a deep grey that seemed to know her better than she knew herself. But it wasn't just his appearance that left her breathless. It was the feeling of recognition, as if she were looking at someone she had lost long ago and had just found again. "My name is Nathan Blackwood," he said, taking a step forward. "And I came here for the same reason you did. Because of your sister." The name Lily, coming from a stranger's lips, was like a slap in the face. Isabella instinctively backed up, hitting her back against the door. "You knew my sister." "I know her," he corrected, and there was something in the way he said the word that made Isabella's heart race even more. "She's alive, Isabella, and she's in danger." The world seemed to tilt to one side, 20 years believing that Lily had died, if not physically, then at least symbolically, since she had never given any news. 20 years carrying the guilt of not having been able to protect her, of not having noticed the signs that something was wrong. And now this man who appeared out of nowhere claimed that her sister was alive. "That's impossible," she whispered. "Lily disappeared when she was 15. If she were alive, she would have contacted me. We were very close, I know." Nathan interrupted, taking another step forward. "That's why she asked me to find you, to explain why she had to disappear, and why she needs your help now." "She asked you?" Isabella shook her head, trying to process the information. "When? Where is she?" "Here, in Deadwater Cove. She never really left town." The revelation was like a punch to the stomach. Lily had been here in town all these years, while Isabella destroyed herself with guilt and longing in Boston, working 12 hours a day in an antique book library, trying to forget her sister was just a few miles away. "Why didn't she look for me?" Her voice came out as a moan. "Why did she let me suffer all these years, thinking she was dead?" Nathan hesitated, and for the first time since they started talking, he seemed unsure. He ran his hand through his hair in a gesture that revealed nervousness, and Isabella noticed that there was a spiral scar running from his wrist to his left elbow, a strange mark, as if it had been made deliberately. "It's complicated," he said finally. "There are things you don't remember, things that happened that last summer, before she disappeared, things that were erased from your memory to protect you." "Erased?" Isabella gave a bitter laugh. "You're talking as if it were possible to delete memories like computer files." "In a sense, that's exactly it." Nathan came closer and she could smell him. Something between sandalwood and the sea. "Do you remember what happened the night Lily disappeared?" Isabella opened her mouth to answer, but the words died in her throat. Whenever she tried to remember that specific night, she found only a strange void, as if someone had cut those hours from her memory with scissors. She remembered having dinner with Lily and Aunt Evelyn, talking about plans for the next day. She remembered going to bed around 11 at night. And then, nothing, until she woke up the next morning with Aunt Evelyn shaking her shoulders and saying that Lily had run away. "I can't remember," she admitted, hating her own weakness. "Whenever I try, it's like there's a black hole in place of that night." Because there was a black hole, Nathan confirmed, literally and figuratively. You saw things you shouldn't have seen. You knew things you shouldn't have known. And when they tried to protect you, part of your memories was lost in the process. Who tried to protect me? Protect me from what? Nathan looked out the window, as if measuring his words. Outside, the fog was getting denser, and the lights of the town were beginning to flicker in the distance. "From me," he said simply. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in his voice, in the way he had said those two words, that awakened a primitive feeling of danger, but at the same time, a part of her, a part she couldn't explain, felt inexplicably attracted to this confession. "Are you dangerous?" she asked, surprised by her own calm. "Very." He turned to face her again, and this time there was something different in his grey eyes, something that made her pulse quicken for reasons that had nothing to do with fear. "Especially for you." "Why?" "Because you make me lose control," he said, and there was a raw vulnerability in his voice that contrasted with his controlled appearance. "And when I lose control, people I care about end up getting hurt." "I don't care about you," Isabella lied, trying to maintain a safe distance between them. "I don't even know you." "You do care," he retorted, taking another step forward. "You may not consciously remember, but your body remembers. Your heart remembers. That's why you're trembling now, isn't it? Not out of fear, but out of recognition." She wanted to deny it, but he was right. There was something about him that awakened a visceral response in her body, as if every cell was screaming that she knew him intimately. It was disturbing and attractive at the same time. "What do you want from me?" she asked, backing up until she hit the wall. "I want you to remember," he said, stopping just inches from her. "I want you to read what your aunt left hidden under the loose floorboards. I want you to understand why Lily had to fake her own death to protect you, and I want you to help me save her before it's too late." "Too late for what?" "To prevent her from making the same decision you made 20 years ago." "What decision?" Nathan slowly raised his hand, as if he were going to touch her face, but stopped millimeters from her skin. Isabella could feel the heat radiating from his fingers and had an almost irresistible urge to lean forward and close the distance between them. "The decision to sacrifice yourself to save those you love," he said in a low voice, "even if it means disappearing forever." Before she could respond, he backed away, breaking the spell that had formed between them. "The book is where your aunt said it would be," he said, walking toward the door. "Third board from the window. When you find it, you'll understand why I had to come here, why I had to risk seeing you again." "Wait," Isabella called when he reached the door. "Where are you going?" "To a place where I won't make you remember things that are better forgotten," he answered without looking back. "At least not yet." "When will I see you again?" He paused on the threshold and she saw his shoulders tense. "You shouldn't want to see me again, Isabella, not if you knew what was best for you." "But I do," she admitted, surprising herself with her honesty. "I want to understand what's happening. I want to see my sister, and I want—" She hesitated without the courage to complete the sentence. "You want what?" Nathan turned around, and there was a dangerous intensity in his gaze. "I want to remember," she whispered. "Even if it hurts, Even if it's dangerous, I want to remember you." For a moment, his face softened, revealing a vulnerability that made Isabella's heart clench. But then his expression hardened again, and he shook his head. "Be careful what you wish for, Isabella. Some memories are erased for a good reason." And with that he left, leaving her alone in the room that smelled of lavender and secrets. Isabella stood still for several minutes, trying to process everything that had happened. Part of her wondered, if she hadn't dreamed the entire encounter, it was as surreal as it was disturbing. But then she looked at the vase of flowers on the dresser and saw that some petals had fallen, as if someone had touched them recently. And in the air still lingered the smell of sandalwood and sea that she had associated with him. Nathan Blackwood was real. Her sister was alive, and there was something hidden under the floorboards that would explain everything. With her heart beating fast, Isabella knelt near the window and began counting the boards. The third one was slightly raised, as if it had been removed and replaced recently. She ran her fingers along the wood until she found a way to lift the board without breaking it. Underneath was a rusty metal box, the size of a shoebox. Inside, the box, wrapped in dark velvet fabric, was what appeared to be a very old diary. The cover was thick, time-worn leather, and it was closed with a fabric ribbon that had once been red, but now had the color of dried blood. Isabella picked up the diary with trembling hands. It was heavier than she expected, and when she held it against her chest, she had the strange sensation that it was pulsing like a heart. She opened it to the first page and saw handwriting that she recognized immediately. It was Lily's, but an older Lily than the teenager she had known. "To my sister Isabella," was written on the first line. "If you're reading this, it means that Aunt Evelyn kept her promise and you came back home. It also means that Nathan found a way to reach you without arousing suspicion, and it means that the time has come for you to know the truth about what happened that summer, about why I had to leave, and about why you never managed to love anyone after that night." Isabella's hands trembled so much that she almost dropped the diary. Lily knew about her inability to connect with others, knew about the years of therapy, about the relationships that never worked because she couldn't connect emotionally with anyone. How was that possible? She continued reading, and each word was like a puzzle piece fitting into place. "You fell in love with him that summer, Bella. You fell in love in a way that scared all of us, including yourself. It was as if you had known each other in another life, as if you were two halves of the same soul finally reunited. But there was a problem. Nathan is not, an ordinary person. And when you discovered the truth about him, about what he's capable of doing, about the power he carries, you made a decision that changed everything." Isabella stopped reading, her heart beating so hard she could hear it echoing in the silent room. She had fallen in love with Nathan. Why couldn't she remember any of this? She returned to the diary, desperate for answers. "You decided that you loved him too much to let him destroy himself. You decided that you preferred to forget love than to see him suffer. So you made a pact, Bella. A pact that erased your memories, but also created a barrier in your heart. You chose the pain of forgetting to save him from the pain of loving someone he couldn't protect." Tears began to stream down Isabella's face without her noticing. There was a truth in those words that resonated in her chest like a bell being rung. It explained so much. Why she had never been able to truly fall in love, why she always felt that something was missing, why she sometimes woke up with a feeling of loss so deep that it left her breathless. But the pact didn't last forever, Bella. After 20 years, the barriers began to break. That's why you felt the need to come back home when Aunt Evelyn died. That's why Nathan returned to Deadwater Cove after all these years of trying to stay away. And that's why I need your help now. Isabella turned the page with trembling hands. Someone discovered about the pact. Someone who wants to use you to get to Nathan. They kidnapped me 3 days ago, and they're using me as bait. They want you and Nathan to meet again. They want you to remember each other, because they know that when that happens, you two will do anything to protect each other, including surrendering yourselves. The diary trembled in Isabella's hands. Lily was in danger, and somehow she and Nathan were the key to saving her. There's one last thing you need to know, Bella. The pact you made, it wasn't just about forgetting. It was about waiting. You promised each other that if someday fate brought you together, again, if someday there was a reason to break the barriers, you would find a way to be together. Forever. This time. The last line was written in a different ink, fresher, as if it had been added recently. That reason has come, Bella. And now, you two have to decide if the love you share is worth the risk of everything you might lose. Isabella closed the diary and pressed it against her chest, feeling hot tears streaming down her face. 20 years. 20 years of half a life, of empty relationships, of a constant feeling that she had lost something precious and irreversible. And now she discovered that she had chosen this. She had chosen to forget to protect the man she loved. But if Lily was right, if the barriers were breaking, then perhaps it wasn't too late. Perhaps there was still a chance to recover what she had lost, even if that meant facing dangers she couldn't even imagine. Outside, the fog had completely swallowed the town, and the first stars were beginning to appear in the dark sky. Isabella stood up and went to the window, looking in the direction of the sea. Somewhere down there, Nathan was trying to keep his distance from her to protect her. Somewhere, Lily was in danger, waiting to be rescued. And there, in that cold room that smelled of lavender and secrets, Isabella made a decision that would change everything. She would remember, she would fight, and she would find a way to save her sister and recover the love she had lost, even if it killed her. The wind beat against the window, making the glass tremble, and for a moment Isabella had the impression of hearing a voice, whispering her name. But when she turned around, the room was empty. Still, she knew she wasn't alone. She could feel eyes watching her in the darkness, could feel a familiar presence prowling the house like a ghost. Nathan hadn't gone away. He was there, watching over her, even knowing that his proximity could awaken dangerous memories. And for the first time in 20 years, Isabella wasn't afraid of the darkness, because she knew that no matter what happened, she wouldn't face it alone. Isabella couldn't sleep that night. Every time she closed her eyes, fragments of strange images invaded her mind. Flashes of a masculine hand intertwined with hers, the sound of shared laughter, the sensation of warm lips against her forehead. Were they memories, or just her brain, trying to fill the voids with fantasies? At 3 in the morning, she gave up trying to rest and went to the kitchen to make some coffee. The house moaned and creaked around her like a living being. Each step of the stairs, each floorboard told a story that she could no longer ignore. There were secrets embedded in the walls, whispers of conversations that happened decades ago, echoes of tears shed and promises broken. It was when she was stirring sugar into her coffee that she heard the sound. Footsteps on the porch, slow, measured, as if someone was deliberately walking to make noise. Isabella froze, the teaspoon still in her hand. It was almost 4 in the morning. Who would be prowling the house at this hour? The footsteps stopped in front of the front door. 3 soft, almost respectful knocks. She waited, her heart racing, but there were no more sounds. When she finally gathered the courage to approach the living room window and peek through the curtain, there was no one on the porch. But there was something on the floor. A white envelope slid under the door. With trembling hands, Isabella picked up the envelope. There was no name or address, just a red wax seal with a symbol she didn't recognize, a spiral intertwined with something that looked like a crescent moon. Inside, a single sheet of paper with an elegant and unfamiliar handwriting. You have 48 hours to find what you're looking for. After that, your sister will pay the price for your delay. Do not involve the police. Do not tell anyone about this letter, and especially do not trust Nathan Blackwood. He is not who you think he is. The letter wasn't signed, but in the lower right corner was the same symbol as the seal. Isabella read the message 3 times, trying to extract some additional meaning from the words. 48 hours to find what she was looking for, but what exactly was she looking for, and why shouldn't she trust Nathan? As if her thoughts had summoned him, she heard a new sound coming from outside. Not footsteps this time, but the low noise of an engine being turned off. Through the window, she saw a motorcycle parked on the road and a familiar figure getting off it. Even in the darkness, she recognized the silhouette. The broad shoulders, the confident posture, the dark coat he wore like armor. Nathan. He walked up the path to the house with firm steps, but stopped when he saw the door ajar. Isabella realized she had forgotten to close it after picking up the envelope. Isabella, his voice crossed the night like a caress. Is everything okay in there? For a moment she hesitated. The letter said not to trust him. But looking through the window at the man waiting on the porch, feeling the same magnetic attraction as before, she couldn't believe he represented a threat. Come in, she said, opening the door completely. He entered slowly, as if he were stepping on sacred ground. In the soft light of the room, she could better see the details that had gone unnoticed during their first meeting. The scar on his jawline was deeper than she had imagined, and there was a constant tension in his shoulders, as if he were always prepared to fight or flee. But it was his eyes that fascinated her most, those grey eyes that seemed to carry the weight of experiences she couldn't even imagine. You shouldn't be here, she said, even knowing it was exactly where she wanted him to be. I know. He closed the door behind him and leaned against it, as if he needed the physical barrier to keep his distance. But I felt that you were afraid, that something had happened. How can you feel that? Nathan hesitated, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that she was beginning to associate with his nervousness. It's complicated to explain. It's always been like this between us. Even when you didn't remember me, I could feel when you were in danger, when you were sad, when... He stopped, as if he had said too much. When what? When you missed me, he completed in a low voice. Even without knowing it was me you were missing. The confession hung in the air between them like a dangerous bridge. Isabella felt the impulse to cross it, to throw herself into his arms and let him explain everything, to fill the voids in her memory with kisses and caresses. But the letter was burning in her hand, reminding her that perhaps she couldn't trust her own instincts. I received this a few minutes ago, she said, extending the envelope to him. Nathan took the letter and read it in silence, but she could see the change in his expression, his jaw tensing, his eyes narrowing in cold and controlled fury. When he finished, he crumpled the paper into a ball and threw it away. Sons of bitches, he muttered. I knew they wouldn't give up easily. Who are they? People who believe I owe them something. People who want to use you to get to me. He moved away from the door and began to walk around the room like a caged beast. I should have foreseen this. I should have stayed away from you. But you didn't. No. He stopped and stared at her with an intensity that made her stomach contract. I couldn't. 20 years trying to forget you, and it only took 5 minutes in your presence for me to realize that I hadn't forgotten anything, that I would never forget. The letter says, I shouldn't trust you. And are you going to do that? Are you going to believe anonymous notes instead of believing what your heart is screaming? Isabella looked at him, at the way the moonlight highlighted the angles of his masculine face, at the vulnerability barely disguised behind the confident facade, at the hands that trembled slightly despite his apparent self-control. And she realized that it didn't matter what the letter said. It didn't matter what logic dictated. Her body, her soul, every fiber of her being recognized this man as someone who would never harm her. My heart isn't screaming, she said, taking a step in his direction. It's whispering. It's telling me that you're the missing piece in the puzzle of my life. Nathan's eyes closed as if her words were a physical caress. Isabella, tell me everything, she asked, taking another step. Tell me about us, about what happened 20 years ago, about why you're dangerous and why that doesn't scare me. Are you sure? Because once you know the truth, there's no going back. And if you remember everything, if the barriers fall completely. He opened his eyes, and she saw fear there, real, visceral fear. I don't know if I'll be able to let you go again. And who said I want to go? The question hung between them, loaded with dangerous promises. Nathan took a step in her direction, then another until they were close enough that she could feel the heat radiating from his body. You were 19 when we met, he began, his voice husky. You were spending the summer here with Lily and your aunt, as always. But that year was different. You were different, more of a woman, more awake to certain things. Isabella felt a tingling in her stomach as she heard the change in his voice. I came to Deadwater Cove for work. At least that's what I told myself. In reality, I had felt your presence here. Something pulled me to this town, to you, like a magnet. He raised his hand and lightly touched her face, just with the tips of his fingers. It was like lightning when we looked at each other for the first time. You were on the beach, reading a book under a cabana, and when you raised your eyes and saw me, what happened? You smiled, and I knew I was lost. The image formed in Isabella's mind with surprising clarity. She could almost feel the sand between her toes, the smell of salt in the air, the sensation of surprise and recognition when she saw a handsome stranger watching her with an intensity that should have frightened her, but instead made her feel as if she had finally come home. I remember, she whispered, and it was as if a dam had broken in her mind. I remember the way you looked at me, as if I were the most precious thing in the world. You were. You are. He moved his thumb along the line of her jaw. We spent 3 weeks together that summer. 3 weeks that were the most intense of my life. We talked for hours, walked on the beach at sunrise. You showed me the secret places in town that only someone who grew up here would know. And we fell in love. Hopelessly. The word came out like a confession torn by force. You made me want to be a better person. You made me believe that maybe I could have a normal life, a family, a future that wasn't defined by the mistakes of my past. What mistakes? Nathan hesitated, and she saw the internal struggle reflected in his eyes. There were secrets he still kept, parts of the story he considered too dangerous to share. My family has a complicated business, he said finally. We deal with things that most people would prefer to ignore, things that can be dangerous if they fall into the wrong hands. What kind of things? Antiques, rare artifacts, objects that, let's say they have a dark history. He moved his hand away from her face, as if the touch were too great a temptation. Some of these pieces have a value that goes beyond the monetary. There are people willing to kill for them. And that's why you had to leave. That's why you made me leave. The correction hit her like a slap. I made you leave. On the last night we spent together, I made the mistake of showing you one of the artifacts I had come to seek here. A piece that my family had been trying to recover for generations. You were fascinated by it, but also scared. You said you could feel something dark emanating from the object, something that didn't belong to our world. Isabella felt a chill run down her spine. There was something in the way he described that night that awakened distant echoes in her. Memory? What happened next? You asked me to choose between you and the life I led, between the love we felt for each other and the dangers my presence would bring to your family. Nathan moved away completely, walking to the window. And I chose you. I decided to abandon everything, cut all ties with my family, start a new life here in Deadwater Cove. But they weren't going to let that happen easily. On the night I was going to tell you about my decision, men from my family came to get me. They said that if I didn't return voluntarily, they would make you and Lily pay for my selfishness. The puzzle was coming together, piece by piece, and Isabella didn't. Like the image that was forming, so you left. I was going to leave, he corrected, but you found out. You heard us talking on the beach. And when I tried to explain, when I said I would find a way to come back to you, that I would fight for us, I didn't believe you. You believed me, but you also realized that as long as you existed in my life, I would always have a weak point that my enemies could exploit, that your choices would always be limited by the fear that something might happen to me. Tears began to stream down Isabella's face without her noticing. The memory was coming back now, not just in fragments, but in complete waves. She remembered the conversation on the beach, the feeling of despair upon realizing that the man she loved lived in a world where love was a deadly weakness. So what did I do? You offered me a deal. Nathan turned to face her, and there were tears in his eyes too. You said that if I truly loved you, I would let you choose to forget, that you would find a way to erase the memories of our time together, to create a barrier in your heart that would protect you from falling in love with me again. And you agreed? I refused. I screamed, I begged, I said I'd rather die than live without you. But you had already decided. You had talked to your aunt about a ritual, a way to cleanse the soul of memories too painful to bear. A ritual? Nathan nodded reluctantly. Deadwater Cove has always been a special place, Isabella. There are energies here that don't exist elsewhere. Your aunt knew this, knew ancient ways of working with these energies. The ritual she performed, it worked, but it had a price. What price? You didn't just forget about me. You forgot how to love, how to completely surrender to someone. The barrier she created in your heart didn't discriminate. It protected you from all intense relationships, not just ours. The revelation explained so much about the last 20 years of her life. The lukewarm relationships, the constant feeling that she was just playing the role of someone in love, the inability to truly connect with anyone. And Lily, where does she fit into all this? Lily was our accomplice, Nathan said with a sad smile. She helped us find moments alone, lied to your aunt about where you were. She believed in our love, thought we would find a way to be together. But when I decided to forget, she was furious, said you were making the biggest mistake of your life, that true love doesn't appear twice in a person's life. You argued the night before the ritual. Is that why she ran away? Partially, but mainly because she discovered something about my family, something that made her realize you were in more danger than we imagined. Isabella approached him again, feeling the urgency to touch, to confirm that he was real and was there. What kind of danger? My family didn't give up on me just because I left, Isabella. They spent the last 20 years looking for me, and recently they discovered about you, about what you meant to me. He took her hands in his. They know that if they can get to you, I'll do anything they ask. That's why they kidnapped Lily. That's why they kidnapped Lily. They know she's the only person you would love enough to risk everything for. And they know I would never let anything happen to her, because that would make me lose you again. So it's a trap for both of us. It's a trap, but it's also an opportunity. Opportunity. Nathan squeezed her hands, his eyes shining with fierce determination. To finish what we started 20 years ago. To prove that our love is stronger than any threat. To be together for real this time. And if we can't, and if they hurt Lily, we won't let that happen. He pulled her closer until their bodies touched. But I need you to understand something, Isabella. If we decide to do this, if we decide to fight for us and for Lily, there are no guarantees. There's a real chance that all of us could get hurt, or worse. And if I don't want to take that risk, then I disappear from your life forever. I find a way to rescue Lily without involving you, and you go back to Boston, to your safe and empty life, but protected. The choice was before her, crystalline in its simplicity and terrifying in its implications, safety or love, loneliness or danger, half a life or the possibility of completeness with the risk of losing everything. Isabella looked at the man in front of her, at the hands that trembled slightly holding hers, at the eyes that hid as much pain as hope, at the mouth that had pronounced words of love that she could finally remember. And she realized there was no real choice. I've already lived 20 years without you, she said, raising one of her hands to touch his face. 20 years, feeling that there was a hole where my heart should be. I won't live even one more day like that. Isabella. I choose you, she whispered. I choose us. I choose to fight for Lily and for what we have, regardless of the risk. For a moment, Nathan just looked at her as if he couldn't believe what he had heard. Then slowly, he inclined his head and rested his forehead against hers. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything in my life. Because if we do this, if we break the barriers completely, I won't be able to let you go again, even if it's to protect you. Good, she smiled, feeling as if she were waking from a 20-year dream, because I don't intend to go anywhere. And then he kissed her. It was as if all the years of separation, all the lost memories, all the repressed feelings exploded at once. The kiss wasn't gentle or hesitant. It was hungry, desperate, as if they were two drowning people who had finally found air. Isabella felt her knees weaken when his tongue touched hers, when his large hands buried themselves in her hair, when he pulled her against his body as if he wanted to merge with her. Memories flooded her mind. Other kisses. On other nights, the taste of him mixed with sea salt and whispered promises. She remembered the sensation of being in his arms on the beach sand, of hands exploring forbidden territory while the waves broke around them. She remembered the way he said her name, like a prayer and a promise at the same time. When they finally separated, both were breathless. Nathan rested his forehead against hers again, his eyes closed. Jesus, he muttered, I had forgotten what it's like to kiss you, what it's like to feel you in my arms. I hadn't forgotten, Isabella admitted, her hands still intertwined in his hair. Somewhere deep down, I always knew, I always missed you. What do we do now? Before she could answer, a sound coming from outside made them freeze. The noise of several cars coming up the road at high speed. Nathan immediately moved away, his body tense like that of an animal ready to attack. Damn, he whispered. They found us. Who? My family. They must have realized I ignored their orders and came after you. The headlights began to invade the room through the windows. Nathan took Isabella's hand and pulled her toward the stairs. We have to get out of here, now. And Lily? We'll have to find another way to save her. But first, we have to save ourselves. They ran up the stairs, but before they could reach the second floor, the front door exploded in a cascade of splinters. Men dressed in black invaded the house, moving with the precision of professionals. "Nathan Blackwood," shouted an authoritative voice. "We know you're there. Surrender, and the woman won't be harmed." Nathan stopped in the middle of the stairs, his body trembling with anger. "Sons of bitches! They promised they wouldn't hurt her." "Plans changed," answered the voice. "Now that we know she remembers you, she's become a problem." Isabella felt cold fear spreading through her veins. Remembering Nathan had made her a target. The love she had just rediscovered could kill her. "What do you want?" Nathan shouted back. "You know what we want, what we've always wanted, the location of the macabre collection. I don't know where it is, but she knows." Heavy footsteps began to climb the stairs, or at least she will know when she recovers all her memories. Isabella looked at Nathan, confused. "What collection? What are they talking about?" "I'll explain later," he muttered, pulling her toward the room at the end of the corridor. "First, we have to get out of here alive." They ran down the corridor, but before they could reach the room, other men appeared at the window at the end of the hall. The house was surrounded. "There's nowhere to run, Nathan," shouted the voice from downstairs. "Surrender and we'll talk like civilized people." Nathan stopped, his shoulders curving in defeat. Isabella saw the decision forming in his eyes and grabbed his arm. "No," she whispered. "Don't surrender because of me. I can't let them hurt you. And I can't let you sacrifice yourself for me. Not again." They looked at each other for a moment that seemed like an eternity, communicating without words. Then Nathan nodded, as if he had read her thoughts. "Together," he said. "Together," she confirmed. And hand in hand, they descended the stairs to face whatever was waiting for them downstairs. They didn't know if they would get out of it alive. They didn't know if they would be able to save Lily, but they knew they would face it together, as it should have been from the beginning. Love had returned to Isabella's life, and this time she wouldn't let it escape without a fight. The room was filled with men dressed in black when Isabella and Nathan came down the stairs. 7 in all armed, all with the same cold and professional expression she had only seen in movies. But what impressed her most was the resemblance some of them had to Nathan, the same striking bone structure, the same grey eyes, the same aura of contained power. Family. That was really his family. "Nathan," said the man who seemed to be the leader, a middle-aged man with greying hair and a scar that cut across the entire left side of his face. "You were always the most stubborn of my sons." "Sons." Isabella felt Nathan tense beside her. "Father," he replied, and there was as much contempt as pain in the single word. "Still playing soldier with your henchmen? Still playing romantic lover? With women you can't protect," retorted the older man. 20 years, Nathan. 20 years you had to forget this childish obsession and take your place in the family. And instead, I found something worth more than all the power and all the wealth you've accumulated with blood." Nathan's father smiled, but it was an icy smile without humor. "Ah, yes, true love. How romantic." His eyes turned to Isabella, running over her from head to toe, as if she were merchandise being evaluated. "So it's her, the woman who turned the head of my most valuable son." "Don't talk to her." Nathan took a step forward, placing himself between Isabella and his father. "Leave her out of this." "Impossible, my son. She is exactly the reason why we're all here." The man made a gesture, and 2 of the henchmen approached. "You're both coming with us." "And if we refuse?" "Then your little sister starts losing fingers one at a time until you change your minds." Isabella felt her blood freeze in her veins, Lily. They really had her. "Prove she's alive," she said, finding courage she didn't know she possessed. "I want to talk to my sister before I go anywhere." Nathan's father raised an eyebrow, as if he were impressed by her audacity. "The lady has courage, I'll give her that. Very well." He made a signal, and one of the men took a cell phone out of his pocket. The screen lit up, showing a video image. Lily was sitting in a chair, her hands tied behind her back, in a room Isabella didn't recognize. Her sister was older, obviously, but still recognizable, the same dark eyes, the same curly hair, though shorter now. There was a cut on her lip and a purple mark on her forehead, clear signs that she had resisted. "Lily!" Isabella called, her voice breaking. Her sister raised her eyes to the camera, and the relief in her expression was palpable. "Bella? My God, you're okay. I was so worried when I found out they had gone after you." "I'm fine. Did they hurt you?" "Nothing that won't heal. But listen, Bella, you can't do what they're asking. You can't—" The image was abruptly interrupted. Nathan's father put the phone back in his pocket. "Enough. She's alive and relatively intact. Now let's settle our business." "What business?" Isabella asked, even though she already feared the answer. "The macabre collection," he said, as if that explained everything. "Your dear Nathan never told you about the family treasure? About the artifacts our ancestors spent generations collecting?" Isabella looked at Nathan, who had gone pale. "It's not a treasure," he said through clenched teeth. "It's a curse. Everything our family touched turned into tragedy." "Childish superstitions," his father dismissed. "The collection is worth more money than most countries produce in a year. And after you stole it, we didn't steal anything." "Then where is it?" The older man took a threatening step toward his son. "Where did you hide the pieces that disappeared the night you ran away?" Isabella felt as if she were watching a conversation in a foreign language. What pieces? What collection? And why? Did everyone seem to think she knew something about this? "I don't know what you're talking about," she said. "I've never heard of any collection." "Not yet," Nathan's father smiled again. "But you will remember. The ritual that erased your memories was efficient, but not permanent, especially now that you and my son have met again. The barriers are breaking, aren't they? The memories are coming back." It was true. Since Nathan had appeared in her life again, fragments of memories continued to emerge, images, sensations, conversations she was sure she had never had. "Even if I remember something," she said, "why does that matter to you?" "Because you were the last person to see the pieces before they disappeared," answered a new voice. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. It was one of the younger men, perhaps 30 years old, who had remained silent until then. There was something familiar about him too, and Isabella realized he must be another son of the family. "Marcus," Nathan said, and there was surprise and pain in his voice. "I thought that I would take your side?" Marcus shrugged. "You disappeared for 20 years, brother. Left everyone behind. What did you expect?" "I expected loyalty. I expected that at least you would understand why I left." "I understand. You fell in love and lost your head. It happens to the best of us." Marcus looked at Isabella with an expression she couldn't decipher. "But that doesn't change the fact that you and she took pieces that didn't belong to you." "What pieces?" Isabella exploded, frustrated. "Can someone explain to me what the hell you're talking about?" It was Nathan who answered, his voice heavy with reluctance. "On the last night we spent together, I showed you 3 objects I had brought from home. I wanted you to know where I came from, what the truth was about my family. I thought that if you knew everything, you might accept being part of it." "What objects?" "A silver amulet with a black stone in the center, a dagger with an ivory handle engraved with ancient symbols, and a small mirror, the size of the palm of your hand, with a golden frame. As he described the objects, images began to form in Isabella's mind. Vaguely at first, then with more clarity. She remembered holding the amulet, feeling a strange vibration emanating from the stone. She remembered looking in the mirror and seeing something that had scared her so much that she had screamed. "I remember the mirror," she said slowly. "There was something wrong with it. When I looked, I didn't see my reflection. I saw something else." "What did you see?" Nathan's father asked, leaning forward with interest. Isabella closed her eyes, trying to recover the memory. "Fire. I saw fire and people running, and—" She opened her eyes abruptly. "I saw a woman being burned alive, and she was screaming my name." The silence that followed was tense and loaded. The men exchanged glances, and Isabella had the feeling she had said something very important, though she didn't know what. "Interesting," murmured Nathan's father. "Very interesting indeed. What does that mean?" "It means," said Marcus, "that you didn't just see the objects. You connected with them, and they connected with you." "Explain that in plain English." "The artifacts of the macabre collection aren't ordinary objects," Nathan said, looking resigned. "They have special properties. Some say they're cursed. Others believe they're doors to other dimensions, other times, other lives." "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. My family spent centuries collecting these objects, and some people have a natural sensitivity to them, a capacity to interact with the energies they carry. And you think I'm one of those people?" "I don't think. I'm sure." Nathan's father came closer. "The question is, where did you hide the 3 objects my son showed you?" "I didn't hide anything. I barely remember seeing these things." "But you do remember," Marcus insisted. "You remember the mirror. It's just a matter of time until the other memories come back too." Isabella felt a wave of claustrophobia. She was surrounded by armed men who wanted things from her that she didn't understand. Her sister was kidnapped, and apparently she had been involved with cursed objects 20 years ago. "And if I really don't know where they are?" she asked. "And if the memories never come back completely?" "Then your sister dies," Nathan's father said simply. "And you and my son will spend the rest of your lives trying to remember until you succeed." "Son of a bitch," Nathan muttered, taking a threatening step toward his father. "Language, Nathan," the older man admonished calmly. "We're just being practical. You have something that belongs to the family. We want it back. It's a simple business." "Nothing involving our family is simple," Nathan retorted. "You know that better than anyone." "True, but this time the rules are clear. Give us the location of the objects, and all of you walk out alive. Refuse." He shrugged. "Well, I think I've made the consequences quite clear." Isabella looked around the room, measuring the options. They were clearly outnumbered, and the men were armed. Even if they managed to get out of there, Lily would still be in their hands. But giving information she didn't have wouldn't solve anything either. "I need time," she said finally, "to try to remember. The memories are coming back gradually, but forcing them might make them disappear again." "How much time?" 24 hours. Nathan's father considered the proposal. 12 hours, and you stay under our supervision during that period. "What do you mean?" "You come with us, to a place where I can guarantee you won't try to escape or ask for help." Nathan shook his head. "No, Isabella isn't going anywhere with you. It's not negotiable, son. Either you both come voluntarily, or we take you by force. Your choice." Isabella held Nathan's hand, feeling the tension in his body. She knew he was calculating the chances of getting her out of there, but she also knew the odds weren't good. All right, she said, surprising everyone. We'll go with you, but I want guarantees that my sister won't be harmed while I'm trying. To remember, you're in no position to make demands. Yes, I am, because without my voluntary cooperation, you'll never get what you want. I can pretend I'm trying to remember for days, weeks, or I can really try to help. Your choice. The older man studied her face for a long moment, then nodded slowly. Very well. Your sister won't be harmed as long as you cooperate. But any attempt to escape or sabotage, and she'll pay the price. Understood. Excellent. Marcus, prepare the cars. We're going to the coastal house. As the men organized themselves, Nathan approached Isabella and whispered in her ear, "Do you have a plan?" "I'm improvising," she whispered back, "but we need time to figure out where these objects really are, and we need to find a way to rescue Lily." "Do you really not remember where they are?" Isabella hesitated. The truth was that since they had started talking about the artifacts, more images were emerging in her mind. Fragments of a conversation with Lily, the sensation of burying something on the beach, the sound of waves breaking while she walked on the sand, carrying a heavy bag. "I think I'm starting to remember," she admitted, "but I'm still not sure." "If you remember, don't tell them immediately. That might be our only bargaining chip." Before she could respond, Marcus approached. "Time to go. The cars are waiting." They were escorted out of the house, where 3 black SUVs were waiting. Isabella was placed in the middle car, along with Nathan and 2 guards. Nathan's father went in the first car, and Marcus in the last. As they left Deadwater Cove behind, Isabella watched the familiar landscape disappearing into the darkness. She didn't know when or if she would see those places again, but one thing was clear. Her life had changed irrevocably in the last 24 hours. "Where are we going?" she asked Nathan. "Family house on the north coast," one of the guards answered before Nathan could speak. "Isolated place, perfect for private conversations." The way he said private conversations made Isabella shiver. Whatever they planned to do to make her remember, it probably wouldn't be pleasant. Nathan must have noticed her fear because he discreetly held her hand. The touch was comforting, a reminder that she wasn't alone in this. The trip lasted 2 hours along the coastal roads that cut through the Atlantic forest. When they finally stopped, dawn was beginning to break, and Isabella could see they were in front of an imposing mansion built on a cliff overlooking the sea. "Home sweet home," Marcus commented ironically as he got out of the car. "Do you still remember this place, Nathan?" "How could I forget?" Nathan replied bitterly. "This is where you tortured me when I was a child, isn't it, father?" "Discipline," the older man corrected, "to teach you to control your talents." "What talents?" Isabella asked, but no one answered. They were taken inside the house, which was even more impressive inside than outside. Antique furniture, Persian rugs, paintings that seemed to be worth fortunes. But there was something sinister about the decor as well. Strange statues in wall niches, symbols engraved on door frames, a general feeling that this house had witnessed terrible things. "I'll let you get settled," said Nathan's father. "We have all day to talk, and the night too, if necessary." They were taken to a room on the 2nd floor. It was luxurious, but the windows had bars, and Isabella could hear the sound of a lock when the door closed behind them. "VIP prisoners," she muttered, looking around. "At least we're together," Nathan said, sitting heavily on the edge of the bed. "I'm sorry, Isabella. You shouldn't be going through this. Neither of us should be going through this." She sat next to him. "But we are. So now we have to figure out how to get out of this situation." "Are you really starting to remember the objects?" Isabella nodded slowly. "Some things are becoming clearer. I remember you showing me the amulet. I remember the strange feeling I had when I touched it, and I remember—" "What?" "Lily. She was with us that night, on the beach. She helped us hide the objects." Nathan turned to face her completely. "Are you sure?" "More and more. I think I know where they are, Nathan. Or at least, I think I know where to start looking." "Where?" "In the grotto. That small cave on the beach where we used to meet. I remember burying a box in the sand inside it." "Jesus!" Nathan ran his hands through his hair. "If they're really there, what's so important about these objects?" Nathan hesitated, clearly struggling with himself about how much he should tell her. "The truth, Nathan, after everything we've been through, I deserve to know the truth." "The objects aren't just old or valuable," he said finally. "They're active. They have their own energy. And people like you, sensitive people, can use them to do things others can't." "What kind of things?" "See the past, predict the future, influence events from a distance." He looked at her with an intense expression. "My family used these objects for generations to build power and wealth, and they wanted me to do the same. But you didn't want to. I saw what power did to my father, to my brothers. It turned them all into monsters. And when I fell in love with you, when I saw the possibility of a normal life, a life without all this darkness," he shook his head, "I knew I had to choose. So you chose to give me the objects?" "I chose to take them out of my family's hands. I thought that if they disappeared, if nobody knew where they were, everyone could move on. But your family didn't give up. They never do, especially my father. He believes these objects are the family legacy, our ancestral heritage." Isabella processed the information, and now they want me to take them to the objects because they think I have some kind of connection with them. Exactly, and the worst part is that they're probably right. You always had a special sensitivity to these things, even without training. How do you know? Because I have it too. That's how we recognize each other, people like us. That's how I knew, the moment I saw you on the beach 20 years ago, that you were special." Isabella stood up and walked to the barred window. Below, she could see guards patrolling the gardens. There was no way to escape through the conventional path. "If I tell them where the objects are," she said, "what happens next? They kill all of us. They can't leave witnesses alive. And if I don't tell, they kill Lily to force me to convince you, and then they kill all of us anyway. So basically, we're screwed either way." "Basically." Isabella turned to face him. Unless what? Unless we find a way to use the objects themselves against them." Nathan immediately shook his head. "No, absolutely not. You have no idea what you're suggesting." "Then explain it to me. If these objects are so powerful, why can't I use them?" "Because they exact a price. They always exact a price. Every time someone uses one of them, they lose a piece of themselves, and some people—" He stopped, as if remembering something painful. "Some people what?" "Some people get completely lost. They become so obsessed with the power the objects offer that they forget who they were before. Like your father? Like my father, like my brothers, like I could have become if I hadn't met you." Isabella returned to the bed and sat next to him again. "But what if it's the only way to save Lily? What if it's the only way for all of us to get out of this situation alive? It's not worth the risk." "Yes, it is, if it means we can be together. If it means my sister won't die because of us." Nathan stared at her for a long moment. "You don't understand what you're saying." "I understand perfectly. I'm saying I trust you to help me not get lost in the power. I'm saying I trust our love to keep me connected to who I really am. And if it's not enough, then at least we'll have tried. Together." Before Nathan could answer, They heard footsteps in the corridor. The lock on the door turned, and Marcus entered accompanied by 2 guards. "Time for the first session," he said with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Daddy is eager to hear what you've remembered." Isabella and Nathan stood up, their hands automatically finding each other. Whatever plan they developed, they would have to do it quickly. Time was running out, and she could feel that the next few hours would be decisive. "We're ready," she said, surprising herself with the firmness in her own voice. But inside her heart was racing, because she knew she was about to enter a game whose rules she didn't completely know, with stakes that included not only her own life, but the lives of the people she loved most. And for the first time since it all began, she wasn't sure if they would come out victorious. The room they were taken to seemed to have come out of a period film. Walls lined with dark wood, an imposing mahogany desk, shelves full of old books and strange objects. But what caught Isabella's attention most were the artifacts displayed in glass cases along the walls. Tribal masks, stone statuettes, elaborate jewelry, all emanating a strange energy that made the hairs on her arms stand up. Nathan's father was sitting behind the desk, examining an old map. When they entered, he looked up and smiled, a smile that didn't reach his eyes and reminded Isabella of a predator spotting prey. "Sit down," he said, gesturing to 2 chairs in front of the desk. "I hope you've used the time well to reflect on the situation." Isabella and Nathan sat down, but she noticed that he kept his body tense, ready to react to any hostile movement. The tension in the air was so dense, it could be cut with a knife. My name is Richard Blackwood," the older man continued, as if they were in a casual business meeting. "I imagine Nathan never talked much about me." "He mentioned that you're a son of a bitch," Isabella replied, surprising herself with her own audacity. Richard laughed, a genuinely amused sound. "I like her, Nathan. She has personality. Very different from the other women you brought home over the years." "I never brought anyone home," Nathan retorted, "precisely to avoid you doing exactly what you're doing now." "Ah, yes, your occasional girlfriends, always so temporary." Richard leaned back in his chair, studying Isabella with renewed interest. "But this one is different, isn't she? This one you really love." "Get to the point," Nathan said. "What do you want?" "You know very well what I want. The amulet of Asmodeus, the dagger of Bathory, and the mirror of Nostradamus. 3 of the most powerful pieces of our collection, which you 2 stole 20 years ago." "We didn't steal them," Isabella interrupted. "And those names? You're making all this up, aren't you?" Richard raised an eyebrow. "Making it up? My dear, these objects have a documented lineage that goes back centuries. The amulet belonged to one of the most powerful demons in the infernal hierarchy. The dagger was used by Countess Elizabeth Bathory in her blood rituals, and the mirror," he smiled, "the mirror was the tool that Michel de Nostradam used to see the future." "Nostradamus," Isabella murmured, feeling a chill run down her spine. "You're talking about Nostradamus." "The same. And now do you understand why these objects are so valuable? Why my family spent generations collecting them? And why they're so dangerous," Nathan added somberly. "Tell her about the side effects, Father. Tell her about what happened to Uncle Gregory when he used the dagger, or about Cousin Melissa after she looked in the mirror for too long." Richard's face hardened. They didn't know how to use the objects with due caution. That doesn't mean the artifacts are inherently dangerous. "Gregory killed himself," Nathan said to Isabella. "Cut his own throat with the dagger after 3 days of using it to see the deaths of the family's enemies. And Melissa spent the last 10 years of her life in a psychiatric institution, insisting she saw different apocalypses in the mirror every time she closed her eyes." Isabella felt her stomach turn. My God! Exaggerated stories, Richard dismissed. Weak people who couldn't handle the power the objects offered. And you think I'm strong enough? Isabella asked. I think you're special enough. Richard leaned forward. Some people are born with a natural sensitivity to the supernatural. They can interact with objects like these without losing their sanity. They're rare, but they exist. How do you know I'm one of those people? Because you survived the first contact with the objects. Most normal people would have a nervous breakdown after seeing what you saw in the mirror, but you just forgot. As if your mind had created a natural defense mechanism. Aunt Evelyn's ritual, Nathan murmured. She didn't just erase the memories. She created a protective barrier in Isabella's mind. Exactly. And now that this barrier is breaking, your potential is manifesting again. Richard opened a drawer in the desk and took out a small velvet box. I want to run a test. What kind of test? Isabella asked, though she already feared the answer. Something simple, just to confirm our suspicions. He opened the box, revealing a silver ring with a black stone in the center. It wasn't one of the three objects they were looking for, but it emanated the same strange energy she remembered from the amulet. I want you to touch this ring and tell me what you see. No. Nathan stood up abruptly. She's not going to touch anything. Sit down, son. Richard's voice carried an authority that made Nathan hesitate. Or your friends downstairs will start removing your sister-in-law's fingers. Nathan sat down slowly, but his fists were clenched. If anything happens to her, nothing will happen. It's just a test. Richard pushed the box toward Isabella. Please. Isabella looked at the ring, then at Nathan. She could see the fear in his eyes, but also the resignation. They had no choice. All right, she said, extending her hand toward the box. But if I start going crazy, you pull me back. Promised. She touched the ring with the tip of her index finger and was immediately assaulted by a flood of images. She saw a man in a black tunic performing a ritual in a dark room, saw women screaming as they were dragged to a pyre, saw armies marching across fields covered in blood. The visions were so vivid that for a moment she forgot where she was. Isabella! Nathan's voice brought her back to the present. She realized she was trembling, and the tears were streaming down her face. I saw terrible things, she said, moving her hand away from the ring. War, death, suffering, as if the ring kept the memories of all the atrocities it witnessed. Richard nodded, satisfied. Excellent. You do have the gift. Now imagine what you could see with objects 1,000 times more powerful than this ring. I don't want to see, Isabella said firmly. Whatever these objects show, I want nothing to do with it. But you will, Richard replied, because it's the only way to save your sister. Even if I remember where the objects are, even if I find them for you, how do I know you'll keep your part of the deal? You don't know. You'll have to trust my word. The word of a man who kidnaps innocent people to get what he wants. Richard smiled again, but this time there was something cruel in his expression. Your sister isn't as innocent as you think. What does that mean? It means she knew exactly what she was getting into when she decided to rob us. It means she knew the risks and still chose to betray the family of the man her sister loved. Isabella felt as if she had been punched in the stomach. Lily didn't betray anyone. She was just a teenager. She was a very smart teenager who decided she could blackmail our family. Richard opened another drawer and took out a sheet of paper. Do you recognize the handwriting? Isabella took the paper with trembling hands. It was a letter written in Lily's unmistakable handwriting, but the content shocked her. Mr. Blackwood, the letter said, I know where your family hid the objects stolen by my father years ago. If you want to recover them, you'll have to pay. for my silence. Otherwise, I'll turn them over to the proper authorities and tell the whole truth about the Blackwood family business. This can't be true, Isabella stammered. Lily would never do something like this. Your sister contacted us 3 months ago, Richard continued. She said she had discovered where you hid the objects and wanted to negotiate. We offered a fair deal, a share of the profits from the sale of the artifacts in exchange for the location, but she got greedy. She wanted more than we were willing to give. So you kidnapped her. We brought her in for a more persuasive conversation. Unfortunately, she proved more stubborn than we expected. Nathan stood up again, this time with a murderous expression on his face. If you hurt her, she's alive and relatively intact, Richard reassured him. But my patience has limits, and those limits are being tested. Isabella reread the letter, trying to find an explanation that made sense. Lily had always been impulsive, but blackmail, that didn't match the sister she knew. Even if this is true, she said finally, even if Lily made a mistake, that doesn't justify what you're doing. It fully justifies it. She stole from us. Now we have to recover what is ours. And then, after you have the objects back, what happens to us? Richard hesitated, and in that hesitation Isabella read the answer she didn't want to hear. You know too much, he said finally. You know the location of this house. You've seen our faces. You know about our business. I can't simply let you go. Then kill us now, Nathan said. Stop pretending there's a negotiation here. I didn't say I was going to kill you. I said, I can't let you go. There are other options. What options? You can join the family. Nathan has always been welcome back as long as he brought results. And Isabella, well, someone with your talent would be a valuable addition to our operation. The proposal hung in the air like a poisonous cloud. Isabella felt nauseated just thinking about being part of that family of criminals. Never, she said. I'd rather die. How dramatic, Richard sighed. Very well. I'll give you a few more hours to reconsider. Marcus. The door opened, and Marcus entered, accompanied by the same guards as before. Take them back to the room, Richard ordered. And Marcus, make sure they see her sister before they go upstairs. Just to remind them what's at stake. Isabella felt her heart race. Lily is here in the house? Where else would she be? We wouldn't leave her in some abandoned warehouse. We're a civilized family. They were escorted out of the room, but instead of going directly to the second floor, Marcus led them down a side corridor that ended at a staircase descending to the basement. The walls were rough stone, and the air grew colder with each step they descended. Marcus, Nathan tried to appeal to his brother. You don't have to do this. You can still choose the right side. The right side? Marcus laughed, without humor. You disappeared for 20 years, Nathan. Left all of us behind. What do you know about the right side? I know that kidnapping innocent people is wrong. I know that torturing women is wrong. Nobody is being tortured. Not yet. They reached the bottom of the stairs, where a corridor, illuminated by weak lamps, extended in 2 directions. Marcus led them to the left, stopping in front of a heavy metal door. 5 minutes, he said, unlocking the door. Then you go upstairs to think about what you saw here. The door opened, revealing a small but comfortable cell. There was a bed, a table, a chair, and even some books stacked in a corner. But what made Isabella lose her breath was the woman sitting on the bed. Lily had changed in the 20 years since she disappeared. She was thinner, with worry lines around her eyes, and her short hair had premature grey streaks. But she was still unmistakably her younger sister, and when she saw Isabella in the doorway, her eyes filled with tears. Bella, she whispered, rising from the bed, my God, you really came. Isabella ran to hug her, and for a moment all the questions, All the anger and confusion were forgotten. It was just her and Lily, reunited after 2 decades of separation. "I thought you were dead," Isabella sobbed. "All these years, I thought I had lost you forever." I know. I'm so sorry for letting you think that. Why did you leave? Why did you never contact me?" Lily moved slightly away, wiping tears from her eyes. "Because I knew that if you knew the truth, you would try to find me, and that would put you in danger." "What truth?" "The truth about the objects, about what really happened that night on the beach." Nathan, who had remained silent near the door, took a step forward. "Lily, you haven't changed a bit." "Nathan," she smiled sadly, "I was hoping I'd never have to see you again. Not because I don't like you, but because it means things have gone terribly wrong." "They have," he confirmed. "Your blackmail letter wasn't one of your better ideas." Lily sighed. "I know how it must have looked, but it wasn't blackmail, not really. I was trying to protect Isabella." "How?" "They found her, Nathan. The Blackwood family discovered where she was, where she worked, everything about her life in Boston. They were planning to go after her, use her to blackmail you." Isabella felt her blood freeze. "They were watching me for months. That's why I contacted Richard. I thought that if I offered the objects in exchange for leaving you alone, everyone could move on with their lives." "But they didn't agree," Nathan said. "At first they did, but then they realized I didn't really know where the objects were, that only Isabella would remember the exact location when the barriers in her mind began to break. So they brought you here to force me to come back." Isabella understood. "And it worked perfectly," Marcus interrupted from the door. "Time's up. Let's go upstairs." "Wait." Isabella held her sister's hands. "There's something more you're not telling me. I can see it in your eyes." Lily looked at Nathan, then back at her. "The objects, they're not just powerful, they're connected. Once you use them, they create a bond with you, and that bond is permanent." "What does that mean?" "It means that even if you hand over the objects to the Blackwood family, you'll always be connected to them. You'll always be able to find them, to use them, and they'll always know where you are." The revelation fell like a bomb. No matter what they did, deliver the objects or hide them, run or fight, Isabella would always be a target. Unless, Lily hesitated. Unless what? Unless the objects are destroyed. They can be destroyed? They can, but only by someone who has a real connection with them, and the process— She looked at Nathan again. "The process can be deadly." Marcus clapped impatiently. "Family reunion over. Time to go back upstairs." Isabella hugged Lily one last time. "We're going to get you out of here," she whispered in her ear. "I promise." "Don't risk yourself for me, Bella. You've already lost 20 years of your life because of these damn objects. Don't lose the rest, too." "I won't lose anything. I'm going to recover everything that was taken from us." They were escorted back to the room on the 2nd floor, but this time Isabella climbed the stairs with an iron determination burning in her chest. She had found her sister, discovered the truth about the past, and finally understood what needed to be done. When the door closed behind them, Nathan turned to her. "I know what you're thinking, and it won't work. You don't even know what I'm thinking. You're thinking about using the objects, about finding them and using them against my family. And what if I am?" "Then you didn't hear anything Lily said. These objects will kill you, Isabella, or worse, turn you into a female version of my father." Isabella approached him, placing her hands on his chest. "And what if it's the only way to free ourselves, to free Lily?" "It's not worth the risk." "Yes, it is." She leaned forward, resting her forehead against his. because if I do nothing, we're all going to die anyway. At least this way we have a chance. A chance of what? Of destroying yourself? A chance of destroying them before they destroy more people. A chance of breaking the cycle of violence your family has perpetuated for generations. Nathan closed his eyes, and she could see the internal struggle reflected in his expression. If you do this, if you really decide to use the objects, I can't protect you from the consequences. I don't need protection. I need support. And if you get lost in the power, and if I lose you forever, Isabella moved slightly away to look into his eyes, then you bring me back. Like you always have, like you did 20 years ago, and like you're doing now. I don't know if I can do it this time. You can, because our love is stronger than any power these objects can offer. She smiled, feeling a crystalline certainty forming in her chest. I trust you, Nathan. I trust us. He pulled her closer, kissing her with a desperate intensity. When they separated, both were breathless. If we're going to do this, he said finally, let's do it right. We're going to need a plan. I already have a plan. What is it? We tell them where the objects are. They take us there to recover them. And when we're on the beach, with the objects in our hands, she smiled, and there was something dangerous in her expression. We show them what a truly powerful person can do. And Lily? Lily comes with us. I'm not leaving her behind again. They won't agree to that. They will when I explain that I need her to pinpoint exactly where the objects are hidden, that the memories are confusing, and I need her help to separate fantasy from reality. Nathan nodded slowly. It might work, but if something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. Isabella kissed him again quickly. Because this time we're fighting together, and this time we're going to win. Outside, the sun was setting. Over the ocean, painting the sky in orange and red tones. In a few hours, it would be night again. And when dawn came, one way or another, everything would be over. Isabella looked out the barred window, feeling a mixture of fear and anticipation running through her veins. 20 years ago, she had chosen to forget to protect the man she loved. Now, she was ready to remember everything and use those memories as a weapon. The war was just beginning. Dawn came wrapped in a dense fog that seemed to presage what was to come. Isabella woke up in Nathan's arms after a night where they had loved each other with the urgency of those who knew it could be the last time. Each touch, each kiss, each whisper had carried the weight of 20 years of separation and the possibility of an eternity of loss. It's time, she said, hearing footsteps in the corridor approaching their room. Nathan pressed her against his chest one last time. If something goes wrong, nothing will go wrong. She moved away to look him in the eyes. We were born for this moment, Nathan, to break the cycle, to free your family from this curse. And if I lose you in the process, you won't lose me. Even if I get lost for a few moments in the power of the objects, you'll bring me back. Our love is stronger than any ancient magic. The door opened, and Marcus entered accompanied by 4 guards. Dad wants to see you, now. They were escorted back to Richard's room, but this time the atmosphere was different. There was a tension in the air, an almost electric expectation. Richard was standing by the window, watching the sea, and when he turned to face them, Isabella saw something new in his eyes, barely disguised anxiety. "Sleep well?" he asked, but it was an empty courtesy. "I hope you use the time to make the right decision." "We did," Isabella replied. "We'll take you to the objects." Richard smiled, but it was a tense smile. "Excellent. And the location?" In the Lover's Cove Grotto, 15 minutes by car from here, but there are conditions. You're not in a position to make demands. Yes, we are, because without my voluntary cooperation, you'll never find what you're looking for. Isabella took a step forward, assuming a confident posture that surprised even herself. The memories are fragmentary. I need to be relaxed and focused to remember specific details. If I feel threatened or pressured, my mind might block the memories again. What conditions? Richard asked, clearly struggling to maintain patience. First, my sister comes with us. She was there that night. Her memories can help complete mine. Second, only you, Marcus, and 2 guards accompany us. A very large group might make me nervous. Third, nobody touches the objects except me. You said I have a special connection with them, so let that connection work. Richard considered the conditions for a long moment. And in return? In return, you recover your precious artifacts and we all get out of this situation alive. Very well, but if you try any trick, any attempt to escape, we won't try to escape. Where would we go? You have power, resources, connections. We're just normal people trying to survive. Normal people? Richard repeated, but there was distrust in his voice. Prepare the cars. We leave in 10 minutes. Half an hour later, 2 SUVs were descending the coastal road toward Lover's Cove. Isabella was in the first car with Nathan. Richard and a guard. Lily was in the second car with Marcus and another guard. The sky remained overcast, and the dense fog made the landscape seem unreal, as if they were driving through a dream. It's been a long time since I've been to this beach, Richard commented, watching the vegetation that flanked the road. I used to bring you kids here when you were little, remember, Nathan? I remember, Nathan replied dryly. You brought us here to train with the smaller objects in the collection. Necessary training. How could you learn to control your talents without practice? We were children. You tortured us. I prepared you for the future. Richard turned to Isabella. Your boyfriend was always very sensitive. He never understood that true power requires sacrifices. And what sacrifices have you made? Isabella asked. Besides sacrificing your soul, I mean. Richard laughed. My dear, when you use the objects, when you feel the power running through your veins, you'll understand that some sacrifices are worth it. The cars stopped in the nearly empty parking lot of the beach. It was too early for tourists, and the cloudy weather kept away the few locals who might have been around. The sea was rough, with large waves breaking against the rocks that formed a natural barrier on the east side of the beach. That way, Isabella pointed to a trail that led to the rock formations. The grotto is on the other side of the rocks. They walked in single file along the narrow trail, with Richard right behind Isabella and the guards bringing up the rear. The sound of the waves was deafening here, drowning out any attempt at conversation. When they reached the other side of the rocks, the beach opened into a small, protected cove. There, Isabella pointed to an opening in the rocky wall that faced the sea. The grotto. The entrance was low, requiring them to bend to pass through. Inside, the cave opened into a circular chamber the size of a small room. The light entering through the opening created dancing reflections on the damp walls, and the sound of the sea echoed strangely, almost hypnotically. Where exactly? Richard asked, examining the sandy floor. Isabella closed her eyes, trying to concentrate. The memories were coming back more clearly now. She could almost see herself 20 years younger, digging a hole in the furthest corner of the grotto, while Nathan held a flashlight and Lily kept watch at the entrance. There, she said, pointing to a corner where the sand seemed slightly darker. We buried a metal box, about 1/2 meter deep. Richard made a sign, and the guards began to dig with small shovels they had brought. After a few minutes they found something solid. Here, one of them announced, pulling a rusty metal box from the sand. Richard took the box from the guards, hands with almost religious reverence. It was smaller than Isabella had expected, the size of a shoebox, but heavy. When he opened it, she could immediately feel the change in the energy of the place. There were the three objects: the silver amulet with its black stone that seemed to absorb the light around it, the dagger with an ivory handle engraved with symbols that seemed to move when she wasn't looking directly at them, and the small mirror with a golden frame that reflected not only the image of the one looking, but something more, something dark, behind. Finally, Richard sighed, like a man who had found the Holy Grail. 20 years searching for you. Now keep your part of the deal, Isabella said. Let us go. Ah, yes. About that. Richard closed the box and handed it to Marcus. Change of plans. Isabella's heart sank. Change of plans. I can't simply let you go. You know too much. And besides, he smiled maliciously, we still haven't tested if you can really use the objects. You said if I found the objects. I said many things. But the situation has evolved. Richard made a signal, and the guards pointed their weapons at them. Now, I want a demonstration. I want to see you use the power you claim to possess. I won't do that. Yes, you will, or your sister dies right here, in this grotto, and you watch. Marcus pointed a pistol at Lily's head, who paled but maintained her dignity. Bella, don't do anything you don't want to do because of me. Touching, Richard said, but irrelevant. You have 30 seconds to pick up one of the objects and show me what you're capable of. Isabella looked at Nathan, who was calculating distances, looking for an opportunity to attack. But they were outnumbered, and inside a confined space, there was nowhere to run. All right, she said finally. But when I do this, when you see what I'm really capable of doing, remember that you asked for it. She approached the box that Marcus was holding and, after a moment of hesitation, picked up the amulet. The instant her fingers touched the cold, silver, the world exploded in a cascade of sensations. Power, pure power flowing through her like liquid electricity. She could feel not only the thoughts and emotions of everyone in the grotto, but their intentions, their fears, their deepest secrets. Richard wanted the objects not just for the power they offered, but because he was dying. An aggressive cancer that doctors had said had at most 6 months to spread. Marcus was torn between loyalty to his father and genuine love for his brother. The guards were mercenaries, loyal only as long as they were paid. And then came the knowledge, not just how to use the amulet, but its complete history. She saw the demon who had created it millennia ago, saw the hands that had used it to build empires and destroy nations. She saw the price each user had paid, pieces of humanity lost with each use, until all that remained was hunger for power and infinite loneliness. Impressive, she heard her own voice say, but it was different now, loaded with an authority she hadn't possessed before. You really have no idea what you're playing with. Richard took a step back, something in his posture changing. What's happening? What's happening, Isabella replied, raising the amulet, is that you've awakened something that should have remained sleeping forever. The black stone in the center of the amulet began to glow with a light that seemed to absorb the light around it instead of emitting it. The guards screamed and lowered their weapons, covering their eyes. "Stop that!" Richard shouted. "You don't know how to control that thing." "I know exactly how to control it," Isabella replied, "and I know exactly what to do with you." But then she felt a hand touching her shoulder. "Nathan." "Isabella," he said softly, "look at me." She turned, and when their eyes met, she saw something that made her hesitate. Fear, not fear of her, but fear for her. "You're losing yourself," he said. "I can see it in your eyes. The amulet is taking over." "I'm in control," she insisted. But even as she said it, she could feel a part of herself slipping away, being replaced by something colder, more cruel. "No, you're not, and you know it." Nathan took a step forward, completely ignoring the weapons that were once again being pointed at him. "Remember what we talked about last night? About trusting me to bring you back?" The words pierced the fog of power that was obscuring her thoughts. Yes, she remembered. She remembered the love in his eyes, the warmth of his touch, the promise that no matter what happened, they would face it together. "Nathan," she whispered, and her voice returned to normal. "I'm here," he said. "I've always been here." "How touching," Richard interrupted. "But this love theatre won't save you. Marcus, take the amulet from her." Marcus hesitated. "Father, maybe we should take the amulet." But when Marcus approached, Isabella did something that surprised everyone. Instead of using the power of the amulet against him, she threw it on the grotto floor. "I won't become like you," she said. "I won't let these objects corrupt me." "Then you and everyone you love will die," Richard said, taking a pistol from one of the guards. "Because if I can't have you as an ally, I can't allow you to remain alive as an enemy." It was then that Lily moved. Taking advantage of the general distraction, she threw herself at Marcus, trying to take his gun. In the confusion that followed, Nathan attacked the nearest guard, while Isabella dove to pick up the amulet again. This time, when the power flowed through her, she didn't try to resist or lose herself in it. Instead, she focused on a single intention: to protect the people she loved. The knowledge came again, but now she knew exactly what to do. "Stop!" she shouted, and her voice, loaded with power, echoed through the grotto like thunder. Everyone froze instantly, as if an invisible force had immobilized them. "You want a demonstration?" she said, rising slowly. "I'll give you a demonstration." She raised the amulet, and the power flowed from her like a wave. But instead of attacking, she did something different. She touched the mind of each person in the grotto, showing them visions. To Richard, she showed what it would be like to die alone in a few months, abandoned by the family he had corrupted with his thirst for power. To Marcus, she showed a future where he could choose a different path, where there was still time for redemption. To the guards, she showed the families waiting for them at home, the simple but happy lives they could have if they abandoned that job. "You have a choice," she said when the visions ended. "You can continue living as you've always lived, obsessed with power and wealth until it completely destroys you, or you can choose something different." Richard was trembling either from anger or fear. "You can't control us forever." "I don't want to control you, I want to free you." Isabella approached the box with the other objects. "And I want to free myself too." She picked up the dagger and the mirror, feeling the power triple when the three objects connected. For a moment, the temptation was almost irresistible. With that power, she could control anything, anyone. She could build an empire that would make the Blackwoods look like beggars. But then she looked at Nathan, at Lily, and remembered what really mattered. "Some things are too powerful to exist," she said. And before anyone could stop her, she raised the three objects above her head and smashed them against each other with all the strength she possessed. The result was like the explosion of a miniature nuclear bomb. Blinding light filled the grotto, accompanied by a roar that seemed to come from the very center of the earth. Isabella felt the power being torn from her, as if she were being disintegrated cell by cell. When the light finally faded, she was on the floor of the grotto, with Nathan kneeling beside her and Lily running toward her. The objects had completely disappeared, leaving only small pieces of melted metal in the sand. "Are you alive?" Nathan asked, helping her to sit up. "I am," she answered, surprised to discover it was true. "I'm fine." Richard was leaning against the wall of the grotto, looking as if he had aged 10 years in a few minutes. Marcus was helping one of the guards to get up, while the other had completely fled. "It's over," Isabella said, looking at Richard. "The objects have been destroyed. The macabre collection no longer exists." "You have no idea what you've done," Richard murmured. "Those objects were our heritage, our legacy. They were a curse," Nathan corrected, "and now it's finally over." Marcus approached slowly. "Father, she's right. It's time to stop. It's time to choose a different path." "Marcus!" "No, Father, enough. Look at us. Look at what we've become. This isn't a family, it's a mafia, and I don't want to be part of it anymore." Richard looked at his son for a long moment, then at the remains of the objects, then at Isabella. Something in his eyes broke. And for the first time since she had met him, he seemed truly defeated. You can go," he said finally. "I won't pursue you any more." "How do we know we can trust your word?" Lily asked. "Because without the objects I have no real power anymore, and without power," he shrugged, "I'm just an old man dying of cancer." They left the grotto in silence, leaving Richard alone with his remains and regrets. Outside, the sun had finally broken through the clouds, illuminating the beach with a golden, warm light. "And now," Lily asked, "what do we do now?" "Now," Isabella said, taking Nathan's hand, "we live. For the first time in 20 years, we can finally live." 3 months later, Isabella was back at the house in Deadwater Cove, but this time she wasn't alone. Nathan had moved to town, and together they were renovating the Hayes mansion. Lily had also stayed. After 2 decades of life in hiding, she wanted to recover the time lost with her sister. The house was transformed. The walls were repainted, the windows unlocked to let in the sunlight, the gardens tended with care. There were no more looming shadows or sinister whispers, just the sound of the sea and the gentle creaking of the pines in the wind. "Do you regret it?" Nathan asked one night, as they sat on the porch watching the sunset. "Regret what?" "Having destroyed the objects, the power you had for a few minutes." Isabella considered the question seriously. There were moments, especially when dealing with mundane problems like bills to pay or arguments with contractors, when she remembered the feeling of absolute power. But then she looked at Nathan, at the simple but happy life they were building together, and knew she had made the right choice. "Never," she said. "That power was an illusion. This here, the two of us, our family, this is real." "Even knowing you could have had everything?" "I have everything." She leaned in to kiss him. "I have you. I have Lily back. I have a house full of love instead. Of secrets. What more could I want?" Nathan smiled, pulling her closer. "A long and happy life?" "That too," she laughed. "Definitely that too." Later that night, when they were lying in the bed they shared in the room that had once been the scene of so much suffering, Isabella thought about all the tortuous paths that had led them there. 20 years of separation, pain, lost and recovered, memories, cursed objects, psychopathic families, supernatural powers and impossible decisions. But in the end, it all came down to a simple truth. True love always finds a way. "Nathan," she whispered in the dark, "I love you. I loved you 20 years ago. I loved you during all the years I couldn't remember you, and I'll love you forever." "I love you too," he replied, kissing her hair. "Forever is too short a time." Outside, the waves broke softly on the beach, washing the sand where terrible objects had once been buried. The night breeze made the pines dance, but it no longer seemed sinister. It seemed like a lullaby, a melody of peace. In Deadwater Cove, A town that had once been haunted by secrets and tragedies, two souls had finally found their home. And this time, nothing and no one would be able to separate them again. Love had won, as it always should have been from the beginning. At the town courthouse 3 weeks later, Isabella Hayes became Isabella Blackwood in a simple but moving ceremony. Lily was the maid of honor, and Marcus, who had definitively broken with his father and started a new life, was the best man. Richard didn't attend, but no one missed him. When the justice of the peace asked if there was any impediment to the marriage, Isabella looked around the small room full of people she loved and smiled. There had been many impediments for a long time. Criminal families, cursed objects, lost memories, 20 years of separation. But now there was nothing between her and the man she loved, except a bright future ahead. No impediment, she said, and sealed her answer with a kiss that was worth 20 years of waiting. In the old Hayes house, now transformed into the Blackwood home, a new story was just beginning. A story of love, family, and proof that even the oldest curses can be broken when two people refuse to give up on each other. The happy ending that Isabella had thought impossible finally became reality, and it was even sweeter for having been one through so much suffering, so much love, and so much faith in the transformative power of a heart that refuses to stop loving.